Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Wednesday, and all of our guests today, including Scott Niedermayer, standing by, brought to you by our title sponsor, Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. Scott Niedermayer is going to join us now. Pride of Cranbrook, Hockey Hall of Fame defenseman, 18 NHL seasons, 4 Stanley Cups, Norris Trophy winner, Conn Smythe Trophy winner, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, world champ, won a World Cup, Memorial Cup champion. And Scott joins us. I don't know if we have time for this interview after going through Scott's resume. Scott, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I think I'm going to ban that introduction from now on. That's too long ago. So let's get right to it.
Well, let's get right to the Four Nations. Watching that, does that take you back to your days playing international hockey, Scott?
No, absolutely it does. I mean, I think first and foremost as players, we're all fans. I'm even more so now, obviously, been done playing for a long time. So I've enjoyed the tournament. I find it somewhat interesting where some people were sort of wondering, I get it's not an Olympics. It sort of doesn't have the cachet of it. But when you put that jersey on and you're playing some of your rivals, across from the face-off setup, you're all in. And I grew up watching that, grew up watching Canada Cups through the 80s. Those are still some of the memories that are etched in my mind. And having a chance to play for Team Canada in a few of those events, obviously a great experience and a highlight of my career. So I'm enjoying watching this tournament.
And with last Saturday in mind, Scott, what were the emotions like for you and your Canadian teammates back in the day going into games against the Americans?
Yeah, well, they're a very good team. I mean, we've had a few games throughout my career with them in finals and hard-fought games. They play a bit of a similar brand of hockey, and sometimes as we do, the physicality and whatnot. So actually, a month or so ago, I watched some highlights from the '96 World Cup, and it was a physical affair out there. I'm not sure how I survived it, but it was entertaining. I mean, there's a lot on the line. You could tell right off the bat from that last game. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow night for sure.
You work with young players, or you have worked with young players. Are there things American hockey is doing better than Canada right now when it comes to development?
There is some differences. I don't have a tendency to get too worked up about it. I think probably the number one thing is you just look at the numbers of hockey players down in the States that's growing, a lot faster than it has up here. I think it's maybe even surpassed the amount of kids playing youth hockey down in the U.S. compared to Canada. So I think you just kind of do the logical math behind that number and you're like, well, it's going to be competitive. So there's a little more focus on individual skill, which at times is nice. I think up in Canada, we look at the team game, and I think that's what makes us Canadian. And I don't think I would change that.
Scott, for the longest time, you were one of the best skaters that Canada ever produced. And right now, one of the best skaters on defense is Cale Makar. What do you like about him when you watch him play?
Well, he's entertaining to watch. I mean, the skills that he has with the puck, his skating. There's so many defensemen now that have that ability. Not to that level, obviously, but they are good skaters. They handle the puck well. They create. They're part of the offense. So it's fun to watch. I mean, it's the way the game has kind of evolved. I am a dinosaur now, thinking back to what it was like to defend when you can hook, hold, cross check, slash. Those days are gone, long gone. And I think these kids have grown up with that sort of mindset. They know they can kind of stick handle right in your space, right around you, right under your nose without really paying any price. It wasn't something you thought you could do back in the day of the dinosaur. So they're taking advantage of it and very comfortable in playing that style of hockey.
Scott, last Saturday, Canada-U.S., 3 fights, first 9 seconds, caught everybody off guard. What did you think?
It was, I don't think anybody expected it. I heard Hagel's comment. I have a tendency to agree with that a little bit, but, I think it's about winning a hockey game. And sometimes that is part of the game and it erupts. And I guess the American guys kind of thought that was something they could use to help them win the hockey game, which they did. So who's to argue with the result? But I think the Canadian guys tomorrow are going to be focused on, willing to take a punch or take a cheap shot to help the team win. That's kind of been the key to success in any brand of hockey, and I would expect that tomorrow night.
Talking with Scott Niedermayer. And Scott, if you don't mind, if you could stop using the word dinosaur, because we get called dinosaurs all the time, right? So, yeah. Put an end to that if you don't mind.
Okay.
Hey, you played in the Olympics and the World Cup. Do you like the idea of what's ahead for the National Hockey League, for international hockey, a major international tournament mid-season every 2 years? Any chance of it being too much of a good thing?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many great memories as a player and as a fan for me that it's hard to believe that. I think we are, really enjoying this because it has been so long. We haven't had a chance to see the best players in the world do this. And they're excited about it. You can tell how they're playing and how they talked about it before the event. So I think that's what you want to see. I mean, hockey's a great game, and it's even better when you've got the best players in the world playing together and against each other. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. I hope they can stay consistent with the World Cup idea. I think that gives it more sort of attention and going forward, where the Olympics always has that. So hopefully there can be some consistency with that.
For people who don't know, Scott, what are you up to these days?
I do work with the Anaheim Ducks, an advisor, so it's sort of a part-time gig, I guess. Also help coach my youngest, who's still at home, and the other boys are out going to school, playing a bit of hockey too, so I catch up to them. So kind of combine those things together, and it keeps me fairly busy.
Hey, Scott, you put kids through minor hockey. You see countries catching up to Canada. We talked, Donnie, about the Americans, but the Swedes, Finns, Russians, they keep coming with great players every year. Where are you with Canadian minor hockey, and what kind of player they're producing these days?
Yeah, I think it's good to always think about that and to think how we can get better. The skills and the way the game's played definitely have evolved, and I think, that can maybe deserve more attention up here. The skating, I think there's a lot of attention here, especially in the spring on tournaments, going to a tournament sort of every weekend, every other weekend. And I think there are benefits to that. I mean, it teaches you how to be part of a team and try to win and the details of that, but it also maybe leaves behind some of the skill elements as well. So I think there needs to be a balance sort of between the competitive side of hockey, which is important to learn. I think as Canadians, we take pride in being very competitive and wanting to succeed, and not forgetting about the skill part of the game as well, and probably access. Maybe actually at the end of the day, probably all over the world is a big issue. The price of it, the price of equipment to play this game is probably prohibitive to a lot of people, and that's unfortunate. We're probably missing some talented young players that could be out there, playing for Team Canada one day. So I'm not sure how you address that, but I think it is a real issue.
Man, if I had a nickel for every time we've heard people like yourself who have so much hockey experience talk about the cost of hockey and how it might be costing the National Hockey League some great athletes, I wouldn't be doing this show. What happens on Thursday, Scott?
Well, Canada's going to win. I mean, I think they know how to, I think I look at their roster and the experience they have, in big games, understanding that type of pressure and how to prepare and go out and perform your best. So I'm confident in those guys that they're going to lead the way, and show the rest of the team what it takes to be focused on the details to win the game. So, obviously I'm Canadian. I'm going to go with Canada for sure, but I really do believe they're going to win the game.
Awesome. Scott, we can't thank you enough. You look great. Thanks so much for doing this, sir.
No, it's all good. Thank you, guys.
You bet.